Wife stayed silent after I candidly explained my love for her. Now I'm questioning if I focus too much on myself. Couple of days ago, my wife came to me with a question that she's asked many times throughout our marriage. Do you still love me? And why do you love me? This is a conversation we revisit from time to time, and I don't mind it at all. She seeks reassurance, and there's nothing wrong with that. Each time she asks, I always say the same thing. Yes, I still love her, and then I tell her why she's so amazing. But every time she asks, it makes me think deeply about why I love her, almost as if I'm cataloging my reasons anew. This time, I decided to be more candid and descriptive with my answer. I told her, I love you because you give me space when I need it. You choose to understand and reflect instead of judge or become defensive when we argue. You taught me not just to love myself but to actually pursue my hobbies, and you always support me, being my own person. When you want us time, you're direct and honest about it. I struggle sometimes because I'm bipolar type 2 and on the autism spectrum, which can make reading people difficult for me, but you supported me through my autism evaluation and made the effort to learn about it just to understand me better. While I spoke, I watched her smile, and for a moment, everything felt right. Then I added something I'd never admitted before. I told her that I love her because I can cry in front of her and she never thinks any less of me for it. When I said that, her smile wavered for just a moment before returning. She thanked me for reassuring her, and we exchanged I love yous, hugged, and kissed. Since that conversation, she has grown noticeably quiet. Not exactly distant, but subdued, like something invisible is weighing on her. Whenever I'd ask if she's upset or if something's wrong, she says, no, I'm not, but I can feel there's more underneath. I have no idea if I said something wrong or triggered this change in her mood, but I just don't know what I could have done. Every day, I go out of my way to reassure her, even before she comes to me with questions. I tell her daily that I love her and how beautiful I think she is. When I wake up, the first thing I do is kiss her good morning. I kiss her again before I leave for work or drop her at hers. I'm there to listen without judgment whenever she needs to vent about her friends or the never-ending drama in her circle. She comes to me when she feels down, and I always listen, never dismissing her feelings. I make her coffee every morning because, as she says, it just tastes different when I make it even though our coffee machine is automatic. She is from the Philippines and I'm from Sweden. She grew up in a household scarred by poverty and violence. Her parents were abusive, leaving scars and burn marks that remain. She tells me she came off easy because her dad never kicked her in the head, which is a heartbreaking perspective to have. She started working at 12 to help pay for her parents' medication, dropped out of school, and has always felt self-conscious because she didn't finish her formal education. I always tell her that's not true. She's anything but dumb. She's learned 5 languages just by listening and talking to people. She amazes me every single day. When we met, she hated her skin color. She's dark-skinned and was bullied for it as a child. I try to show her how beautiful I find her, inside and out. I do the dishes because I know she hates doing them, except for the rare times when she insists out of guilt, and I reassure her that I truly don't mind. I buy her flowers, tulips, her favorites even though they make her sneeze and itch. I give her massages after a long day if her feet ache, cook her favorite foods, plan date nights, and go out of my way to pick up whatever treat she's craving. I tidy our apartment because she hates clutter. When she was diagnosed with uterine cancer, I was with her, holding her through the anxiety and heartbreak of needing a hysterectomy. She loves children, and losing the ability to have them hit her so hard, she was convinced I would leave her for someone who could give me kids. I never let her believe that. I repeated over and over that I would never leave her because she is the love of my life. I go with her to every post-treatment checkup. She's been cancer-free for 4 years now. When she moved to Sweden, I made sure she had a therapist, knowing she needed help to process her trauma. She is truly incredible. I love her more than I love myself, and I always tell her so. I've even called her my teacher, not because she literally instructs me, but because she's helped me find my own strength and stand up for myself. She's raised my self-esteem and transformed me into the man I am today. She has always pushed me to become better. Reflecting on all this, I realize that maybe calling her my teacher is the wrong choice of words, but I have no better phrase. Every time she's come to me before with her questions, I've always responded by talking about what I love about her, how incredible she is. This time, though, maybe I unintentionally made it about myself. Maybe I overwhelmed her with my own feelings, instead of focusing on her reassurance. We keep a whiteboard in our apartment to write our schedules and leave each other messages. I plan to fill it now with all the things I love about her, pick her up some tulips, and cook her favorite meal. Then, I'll sit down with her, apologize if I made my answer all about myself, and tell her again how amazing I think she is because she deserves to hear it, and I want her to feel it every day. Update 1. I took your advice, or at least part of it, and decided to write to my wife, but instead of a letter, I poured my heart out on our large whiteboard that hangs in our bedroom. On that board, I wrote all the reasons I love her for who she is, not just for the things she does for me. Here's what I wrote. I'm a Hull. I love you more than I will ever be able to express in words. Every day, I get to wake up next to you and see your beautiful face lying beside me. I love it when I hear you sing karaoke and do your happy dance when you eat your favorite foods. I love your smile and the way you laugh when you watch your old Filipino movies. Every day I get to look into your beautiful eyes, those light brown eyes with a small chip in the left one. I get to watch your beautiful face smile as I hand you your coffee in the morning, and when you sit on the couch waiting to watch GMM together. I love how happy you are when you're watching your Korean dramas, how excited you get telling me all about them, or about your latest crush on your favorite actor. How you jump and shriek when we watch horror movies, even how you steal my blanket while we sleep. I love your face, every mole, scar, and birthmark. I even love those mornings when you show me your boogers with a grossed out face. I wake up happy every day to have you in my life. Mahal na mahal kita. Simula nanag tayo magkita sa mga susunod pangyayari. Anabangan ko lahat ng tasit ng cape na ibibigay ko sa iyo. That day, my wife was supposed to babysit for a couple in Stockholm, but their kids were sick so she didn't need to go. I figured she'd be home by 7 p.m., so I wrote my message on the whiteboard around 1 p.m. I wanted to surprise her with tulips and was going to cook her adobo for dinner. Around 3 p.m., I got a work call and had to head on-site unexpectedly, but figured I'd pick up the flowers on my way back. When I finally walked through the door, she had already read my message. She hugged me, crying, and thanked me over and over for what I'd written. She immediately wanted to know why I wrote it, and I told her I'd noticed she'd been a little upset lately, so I wanted to cheer her up a bit. She just said, "I love you," and when I handed her the tulips, she cried even more. Once she calmed down, we sat on the couch and I explained that I thought she'd been upset because of my answer to a question she had asked me a few days earlier. I wanted her to know what I love about her as a person, and not just what she does for me. She just smiled, stroked my arm, and hugged me tightly again. Then she told me she had been upset, but not for the reason I thought. My answer had been different than usual when she'd asked before, but she still thought it was sweet that I liked the things she did for me. I had started reading about love languages, and realized I'm definitely a words of affirmation and touch kind of person, while she is 100% about acts of service. The fact that I'd even thought about this made her happy. She felt seen and appreciated. I asked what, then, had really made her upset. And this answer hurt me a bit. The last thing I'd told her was that I could cry in front of her and she wouldn't think any less of me for it. But she admitted, feeling terribly guilty, she did actually see me as less after I'd cried in front of her. It hasn't happened often, just 3 times in our whole relationship, always when I was really struggling, feeling lost or depressed. She explained, using a Tagalog word, kilig. It's the fluttery, shivery feeling you get in your chest and stomach during cute or romantic moments. In English, it's kind of like butterflies. She said, as gently as she could, that every time she saw me cry, it was as if the butterflies stopped. She still loved me and knew that her reaction was wrong, but she just couldn't help how it made her feel. It was something she worked on in therapy, why vulnerability made her wrongly see me as less. Over time and with help, her therapist helped bring some of the butterflies back after the first time it happened, but not as strongly. Then, unfortunately, I cried in front of her 2 more times, each time acting as an insecticide in her stomach, my words, not hers. She kept telling me she loved me more than anything, and was so sorry for being that way. I told her it was okay, we don't choose our feelings, and maybe someday things would change, and I could be fully open with her again. But that day isn't today. I asked if this would happen again if I opened up like that another time. She just said honestly, she didn't know. She promised the butterflies are back now. She feels them every time I bring her coffee in the morning, every time she comes home to a clean apartment and the smell of food I've made, every time she remembers how much I support her. She told me about how she looks at her friends' husbands and boyfriends and realizes how good I am for her, even better than she feels she deserves sometimes. She says her friends' partners do the bare minimum, always want their wives to be perfect little housewives, make them fight for their dreams or hobbies. But me? I'm always in her corner, rooting for her no matter what, and when her family needed help, I never complained. I paid for her brothers and sisters' new house and bathroom without hesitation. For her parents? Different story, they can go in themselves. She even reminded me, With this fond nostalgia, about the time after her hysterectomy when she was so homesick she desperately wanted a particular Filipino sweetbread. The only place it was available in Sweden was a Filipino store in Linköping, a 2-hour drive. And I just hopped in my car, drove there and back, and brought it home to her, because I wanted her to have it. Her friends' partners never would have done that, and she still thinks about it 4 years later. My small acts means the world to her. After talking, we hugged, kissed, and told each other I love you. I know we'll be all right. Still, I can't help but feel a little sad, knowing I can't open up to her emotionally like that anymore. That the next time I hit a low, the only person who will really listen without judgment will be my therapist, someone I have to pay. That honestly bums me out deeply. But as my wife's most hated Swedish phrase goes, it is what it is. The day wound down as I decided to cook up some adobo, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, bringing back memories of home. There's something about chopping garlic and watching the sauce thicken that makes everything else fade away for a moment. With dinner ready, we settled in together on the couch, letting the flavors linger as we dived into Lord of Mysteries. There's nothing quite like those quiet hours, good food, a gripping show, and the comfort of unwinding with someone at the end of the day. Update 2. The next morning started like any other, me fumbling for the kettle before my eyes adjusted, her hair half over her face, a sleepy good morning, mahalo that still makes my brain do fireworks at 6:30 a.m. I handed her the mug, and she held my wrist for a second longer than usual. Not a big thing, but it felt like something was turning over quietly under the surface. Around lunch, she messaged me from the living room with something I honestly didn't expect. Her therapist wanted me to join their next session, if I felt up to it. My stomach did a weird flip. I said yes immediately, then sat at my desk and just watched the snow come down outside, feeling both grateful and like my insides were a bit too loud. I didn't know where it would go, just that she was inviting me into a part of her world I usually only got postcards from. The session was gentle. That's the word that fits. Her therapist didn't prod. She asked me to talk a little about what crying actually is for me, what my body does, what my brain's telling me, what I'm scared of when I cry. Then she asked my wife what happens inside her when she sees it. The answer made sense in a way that hurt and soothed at the same time. In her head, tears have always been a prelude to chaos because of what she grew up with, not because of me. Her body hears crying and goes on alert, like a fire alarm that doesn't care if it's burnt toast or a real fire. Her therapist suggested we build a small ritual that tells both our nervous systems, this is safe. A container, she called it. Something stupidly simple, something we can do even if my brain is fogged and hers is racing. We settled on a phrase and a few anchors. If I feel tears coming and I need to be held in it, I say, fika muna? Toffee first? It's ridiculous in a way that makes it disarming. Then I put on my soft gray hoodie she always steals, we sit on the couch with a weighted blanket, and she gets me a mud and sits close enough that our knees touch. We decided there's no fixing in those moments. Just breathe and log care as an action, not a solution. The therapist smiled like she keeps a drawer of those smiles for when couples actually land on something together. Walking out, my wife squeezed my hand and said, Hindi ko gusto na mag isikay diyan. I don't want you to be alone in there. It was the first time since our talk that I felt the sadness inside me loosen a little, like it had space to stretch its legs without being ashamed of taking up room. I wanted to meet her halfway in her language, not just Tagalog but in the way she understands love. That night I did something I've never done and would have sworn I would never do. I practiced a Tagalog love song and set up the living room like a karaoke bar. I slid the coffee table aside, dimmed the lights, and strung the stupid little fairy lights from December back across the lamp. I parked a box of tissues on the armrest, partly for the bit, partly because I'm me. On the TV, I stuck a strip of masking tape at the bottom and wrote phonetic notes so I didn't butcher the vowels. My phone had a call queued up, simple, classic, the kind of song even I could keep up with if my hands weren't shaking so hard the mic squeaked. She came out of the shower with a towel on her head and stopped dead in the doorway. But I know too, she asked, half laughing already. For you, I said, suddenly very aware that my voice was 12 years old and my heart was somewhere in my throat. Don't roast me. The track started. I missed the first note by a Swedish mile and then found the second. Her face changed when she realized what song it was. Her eyes went wet immediately in that way where you're smiling and crying at the same time, and she did that small two-handed clap Filipinos do when they get excited, then covered her mouth like she had to hold her own butterflies in place. My mouth tried to tangle over some words, but I could see the lines in my handwriting onto the screen. E ka ang li wa nag buhay ko. It was clumsy and it was honest, and halfway through because of course my voice cracked and I felt it coming. I looked at her. She looked back. I didn't need to say it. Fika Muna, she whispered anyway, like a password to a secret room we'd built together in 2 hours. She handed me the mug she'd been drinking from without moving back, and the heat of it found my fingers. I kept singing. Here's came, but they sat differently. Not like a storm rolling in. More like warm rain in Manila when the dust finally lets go of the road. She didn't pull away. She stepped in and rested her forehead against mine while I sang the last chorus off-key, and stupidly proud of being off-key. When the track faded, she didn't talk for a beat. Then she said, Hindi ne wala young kilig. Na mek lang sa lambing. The butterflies didn't die. They mixed with tenderness. She laughed, this wild relieved sound like she'd found a piece of herself she thought she lost in some old house back home. Hindi ka less. Ang tapping mo. You're not less. You're brave. We ate late leftover adobo tastes better the second day and she kept chuckling at nothing, wiping her cheeks and then looking at me like she'd just put a pin in a map somewhere we didn't know we could go. Before bed she wrote on the whiteboard, right under my long paragraph from before, just 4 words, K plus kilig plus a caw. She drew a crooked little tulip next to it because of course, she did. I wish I could say the world gave us a week to just sit in that new softness, but it's still the world. 2 days later, everything went sideways. My job. Server hell, 3 phones ringing at once, 1 client who thinks urgent means I didn't read the manual. I felt it coming like someone dimming the lights from the edge of the room, the kind of low that usually takes my words and leaves me with static. My instinct was to swallow it and keep moving. The memory of her saying the butterflies die tried to steer me back into the old lane. I stood in the break room with a paper cup and my reflection in the microwave door and made a choice that felt very small and very huge. I texted her one thing, Fika Muna. She responded with a coffee emoji and on my way. She beat me home by 15 minutes. The apartment smelled like garlic and a whiff of effervescent oil. She rubs it on her temples when she's tired and the scent is a childhood in a bottle. She'd put the hoodie on the couch already and set our mugs down on coasters like it mattered that the table didn't get rings on it when my brain was circling the drain. When I sat, she tucked the weighted blanket over our knees and didn't ask a single fixing question. Just, I'm here. I cried in a way that felt embarrassingly quiet and very real. She didn't flinch. At one point she started humming the tune to a caw under her breath, not loud enough to be a performance, just enough for my ribcage to remember that we have lived through worse. When I finally looked at her, she gave me that look from the karaoke night again and said, almost wonderingly, alive pa rin young butterflies. They are still alive. She laughed a little through her nose like she was embarrassed to admit she had doubted it that morning, not last week. She kissed my knuckles. Det ordnar sig, she added in Swedish, with the accent that makes the words feel new and kinder than when we say them. It will work out. Later, she told me something I don't think she could have said before. The first time she saw me cry years ago, her body braced for impact because in her life, men crying always came with breaking plates or broken promises after. Piero ikaw ibang tao, she said. But you're a different person. Kaya lang in ko lang turu you and yan old brain ko. I just need to teach my old brain. Hearing her call at her old brain and not her truth cracked something open in me I didn't know was still boarded up. We still wrote on the whiteboard that night because it's become our thing. She wrote, in that careful blocky handwriting she uses when she translates her Tagalog words in her head first, you're my safe person. I drew a tiny coffee cup and a terrible little butterfly with eyes, and she laughed so hard she snorted. There's no movie moment where everything suddenly makes permanent sense. We still clean the sink, still argue about whether I put too much vinegar in the adobo I do, still have to go to work and deal with people who don't know how to restart their routers. But now there's a soft hoodie on the couch that isn't just a hoodie. There's a question we can't ask each other that isn't really a question. There is a song that will make us both ridiculous at parties, if it ever comes on. And there's a space between us that somehow got bigger and safer at the same time. This morning, over coffee, mine black, hers too sugared to be legal, she asked if we could make the joint sessions monthly for a while, just to keep practicing. I said yes. She answered by pointing to the stereo. Practice? She teased. I groaned and told her I'm only learning one more Tagalog song and it better not have words with NG twice in a row or my tongue will resign. She picked one anyway and wrote her, on a sticky note. We stuck it to the TV next to my phonetic tape. I kissed her on the cheek. She wiped a bit of booger on my sleeve with a wicked grin to prove we're still us. After she left for work I looked at the whiteboard again and added one more line under her words, simple and true, hindi kita ewan. I won't leave you. Update 3. The email hit my inbox at 8:12 am with the most Swedish subject line I've ever seen, Inbjuden till Nedborgarskap ceremony. My brain took a second to process it. I walked to the kitchen like I was carrying a secret that was hot to the touch. She was in her robe, hair up in a tragic bun, making exaggerated sniffing sounds over the kettle because she says she can't smell when the water's ready. I handed her the phone without saying anything. For a heartbreak, she didn't get it. Then she did. Her mouth made an O like a cartoon, and the next second I was half tackled into the cabinets. She laughed so loud the neighbor upstairs thumped the ceiling once in solidarity or protest. She read it 3 times, whispering the date like it might run away if she didn't hold it. March. Hall with flags. An oath in a language she learned by asking cashiers at IKEA to repeat caveat 3 times until it stuck. Her eyes went wet and I heard myself say it like muscle memory, Fika Muna. And it was ridiculous and perfect, because apparently our little password works for happy tears too. Hoodie. Blanket. 2 mugs warming our hands. She shook her head and kept laughing anyway, saying, Pee-weed ring palasat to what I guess it works for joy. We wanted to celebrate in a way that made sense to us, which meant we ended up at the Filipino store in Kista at 11 a.m. buying too many things we didn't come for. She did a little shoulder shimmy in front of the sardines aisle because you'd think shells of century tuna are a love letter the way she looks at them. At the register there was a neon orange poster half taped to the glass, Oppa Night Plus Karaoke Contest, Saturday, 7 p.m. Prizes, rice cooker, sack of jasmine, grocery vouchers. She poked the paper with a fingernail. Sali ka, she said, like of course I would. No, I said, immediately, which I have learned in marriage is a prelude to yes. That night, the fairy lights came out again like they were now a permanent resident of the living room. She wrote 4 song titles on sticky notes and stuck them to the TV like menu options. I picked Kaishit Maputi na ang buhak ko. It felt like the right kind of promise you can't hum. I did the phonetic tape thing again and she made fun of my handwriting and then kissed me like an apology for the teasy she had no intention of stopping. Saturday came with that weird gray sky that Sweden does where it feels like you live inside a refrigerator. My hands were useless all afternoon. She caught them doing this tremor thing by the sink and covered them both with her own. Come me yak ka, can't a pa ring, she said. If you cry, keep singing. The restaurant was one of those multipurpose places that is a churro by day and a dance floor if you push the tables back. Everyone smelled like perfume and fried garlic and hairspray. A kid ran past us cradling a karaoke mic like a trophy. We ate 2 sweet, iced tea and skewers that stained my fingers red. They called names and people went up brave and shameless, belting ballads that could wake the dead. When they said mine, I stood and my legs did an interpretive dance of betrayal. She squeezed my wrist once, hard enough to locate me in my skin, and then let go. The track started. I missed the first vowel again, because I'm apparently consistent in my ability to be 1 note late to my own life. Then I caught the second. The words felt like walking on a rope I'd tied myself wobbly but mine. I didn't plan to cry. You never do. It just showed up during Kahit Mabuti na ang buhak ko, right on the word buhak hair of all things, which made it stupidly on brand. I looked over and she did not flinch. She did not do the old frozen smile that used to press the pause button on my chest. She just put her hand against her own heart like she was trying to memorize its rhythm. No fakes, no panic. Butterflies, alive. I sang through it, voice oddly and honest, and something in the room moved toward me instead of away. When it was over, 3 titas at a corner table did the half-stand applause that felt like being knighted by people who smell like Victoria's Secret love spell, and a Lola in a sequin top told me you and ko sayo, ang sweet mo on the way back to my chair. We didn't win first anything. I got second. The prize was a rice cooker big enough to host a small wedding inside. She carried the box in both arms on the way out like a baby and kept laughing in these little bursts that made her step funny on the snow. On the train home, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, softly, Kadit Mapui na yung buhak ko, a ka pa rin. Then, just to make it very us, she added, Basta huwag mo kalimatan mag sing. Don't forget to cook the rice. I told her I'd put a calendar remind her until I die. She told me that's what she married, a man who will set an alarm for love. The next day did the thing life does where it changes themes mid-song. We were leaving with our trash and cardboard to the recycling room when we heard it this thin, rusty hinge of a sound. A kitten, jam, behind a big blue paper bin, eyes goop, shaking like a loose screw. Stockholm in February is a bad place to be small and alone. We moved without talking. She shrugged out of my gray hoodie faster than I've ever seen anyone undress and used it like a net, murmuring, Hangamuna, baby, to a creature that does not speak any language of ours. The vet was open and not far. The whole way, the kitten made these saw sounds and then stopped, head heavy in her hand, and I felt my ribs make a space they didn't have to hold this new panic. She looked at me over the carrier door and I thought, don't you dare die on our way to teaching our old brains new tricks. It didn't. Of course it didn't. The vet warmed and cleaned and weighed and scanned. No chip. Probably 3 months, maybe 4. Dehydrated, scared, full of a life that had been busy trying to leave its body. We took it home on foster, maybe adopt, which lasted exactly as long as it took for the kitten to climb my leg like a tree and fall asleep in the dip of my knee under the weighted blanket, pinning me to the couch while my wife took a picture and said in her low, I have an idea voice, Pangolin and Natin. Cape. Let's name it Coffee. Of course we did. Cape slept through Fika, moon like it was hired for the role. It purred this broken motor sound that turned the edges of my bad thoughts down. When it woke, it trotted in a circle on the hoodie like it was dialing a phone to somewhere safer. At night, as we were too tired to do anything but be horizontal and full of cheap, instant noodles, she looked at me with a different kind of serious. Pee-wee ba, she said slowly, na me ko din ako? Harasakan? She twisted the hem of the blanket like she was wringing water out of it. Hag na tri tritter ako. Hindi iyak mo. Akin. Can I have a code, too? For me? When I get triggered. Not your crying. Mine. We built it next to Cape snoring like a tiny pearly hog. We tested words in our mouths like fruit at the store. Hingamuna, felt right. Breathe first. When she says it, we agreed, I don't do speech it or plants. I do tests. I boil water. I slice mango if we have it. I cut nails from packages so she doesn't have to touch the sound of tape ripping. I make the bed into something with corners again. She can't curl like a comma and not be asked to finish the sentence she's in. We didn't need it immediately. Then her sister called 3 days later crying about money that got swallowed by a cousin's bad decision, and I watched my wife's body go thin like a flame under a draft. Her hands started doing the little jumpy movements they do when old ghosts show up in new clothes. I opened my mouth to say a very Scandinavian det ordnar sig, and she beat me to it, eyes on mine, voice steady in the way that is bravest of all, Hingamuna. Okay. I filled the kettle. I wiped the counter just to give my hands a thing to touch that was not her breaking heart. I put Cape on her stomach like a beanbag because apparently we own a heated, vibrating loaf now. We breathed. No solutions for 20 minutes. Just the radiator clicking and a cat pretending it had a job. Later, she told me she didn't lose the butterflies when she watched me pace the kitchen trying not to fix her life. Nag yi belang ng at sura. They just changed shape. Heron naging hawak. Like a holding. We wrote on the whiteboard before bed, squeezed between our last doodles. She wrote in neat, deliberate letters, kahit maputi na ang buhak ko, ikaw pa rin. I added underneath in my wonky Swedish that she always teases, tills h ret blur vit, Roman 6 TV. Until the hair is white, the two of us. She drew a little rice cooker with a face and a microphone. I drew something that was technically a cat if you count the ears. Wonder it she wrote Cape, then added a heart that looked like it had sneezed halfway through because she laughed while she drew it. The citizenship ceremony is on our calendar now, sitting like a small star on a month that used to feel like a hallway more than a room. We have a code for my sad and now we have a code for hers. There's a hoodie that smells like efficacent oil and kitten and a song that gets stuck in my head when I'm trying to reboot a server that doesn't want to live. And there's a rice cooker on our counter that is absolutely too big for 2 people and 1 cat, which is, I think, the point. Some things we're building are on purpose and some show up behind blue bins in the recycling room and start purring like they've always known your name. Update 4. The morning of the ceremony felt like standing on a swaying dock before you see the boat, everything still, everything moving. She decided on a cream dress that made her skin look like it was lit from inside and stuck a tiny enamel tulip pin on the collar. Cape tried to assassinate the tulip and failed, sulking into the laundry basket with a sock as hostage. I pressed the dress with the kind of attention I usually reserve for server passwords. She asked me, for the 10th time, if her sweet dish would be good enough. I answer, like always. Din svenska, are min favorite. Your sweet dish is my favorite. Statue set smelled like old wood and lemon polish and a choir keeping its breath for later. There were flags and chairs with names on slips of paper. Her name was spelled right. She ran a finger over the letters like she was waking them up. Families with strollers, a guy in a suit with sneakers, a woman in a hijab holding hands with a toddler in glitter shoes who kept saying flagon. Flagon. Like it was a friend she couldn't wait to hug. She squeezed my hand twice. I squeezed back twice. Morse code for here. You're here. They played music and said the words you say for these things, the ones that matter more because people outbled and waited to be able to say them out loud. When it was her turn to walk up, she didn't walk, she did the small Philip in a glide thing that looks like floating. She said the oath in Swedish, careful and strong, only tripping once on the hush of sju that always goes sideways in her mouth. I felt my eyes do the thing again and she must have felt it across the air because she glanced back and the corner of her mouth lifted. Fiq imuna? I mouthed, a joke, a prayer, both. The official asked if anyone wanted to speak. 2 people did, a man from Syria whose voice quivered like a string instrument and a woman from Bosnia who told a joke that pulled a laugh from the stiffest shoulders in the room. Then my wife lifted her hand like she was in school and I swear my stomach let go of gravity. She walked to the small lectern and spoke in that careful, round Swedish of hers. Jagar hemma nu, she said. I am home now. Men mit hem har am and gas br. But my home has many languages. She talked about learning to say kvedo and kangable in the strange comfort of a grey sky that looks like a ceiling you can't bump your head on. She said, Ni ldre mediat kfr bussen kan var ek harlek. You taught me that a line for the bus can be love. Then in Tagalog, to the empty air that somehow held Manila and Stockholm in the same hand, Salamat sa tahanan. Thank you for a home. People clap and one of the staff bit their lip in the way you do it when you try not to smile too hard at strangers. I did not bother pretending anything. I clapped like an idiot in love. My phone buzzed 3 times before the echo of applause faded. Her sister's name lit the screen. I felt the exact moment my wife's shoulders changed shape. She leaned into me like I was a waltz she trusted. Hingimuna, she said, so soft I almost missed it. We stepped out into the cold hallway, flags behind us like a row of held breaths. She put me on speaker. Her sister's voice was a fly and a broken pipe. Words came in gasped state, hospital, pira, and gay and na. Their father. Hospital. Money. Now. Everything in me wanted to do all the verbs at once, fix, call, run, pay, carry. Instead I put my hand on her back and counted my own breath so I wouldn't try to climb inside hers. We sat on the marble step next to a heater that clicked like it was clearing its throat. Non gustamo? I asked. What do you want? She pressed her palms together like prayer without the prayer. I con and bumalik done, she said. I don't want to go back there. Pero hindi ko ring gusto na may mamatay ako too, na walang janawa. But I don't want someone to die and it's me, doing nothing. We built something there on that step with our coats open and a cold being inappropriate on our necks. We decided to help a very specific shape, not the whole storm. Hospital bill, directly to the hospital, no cash, no middleman, no long speeches, just a wire that keeps someone's heart beating tonight. And then we would stop. Not because she didn't love, but because she does. Because the old brain can learn, and love can have a door you can close and still live inside the house. She nodded once, like deciding cost her the same amount I gave back. She called her sister again. Makikanig ka second, ha, she said, voice low and steady like a metronome in a room full of drums. You're going to listen to me. Tuchalong kami sa hospital gayan. Diartso. Hindi sa kanya. At pagnagsagasia o nanakot, I'd be a baba ko ang telepono. We will help the hospital now. Directly. Not to him. And if he yells or threatens, I'm hanging up. There was a pause the length of an old scar. Mahal kita, 8, she added, the way you add a hand on a shoulder so it feels like you didn't leave. Her sister cried in a new way, less like a pipe, more like rain you can hear but no will pass. She texted the billing details. I did the transfer, fingers calm in a way my insides were not. We walked back in and caught the last notes of a soprano somewhere behind the curtains. She leaned her forehead on my shoulder like we were teenagers and the world was only the width of a hallway. Alive pa rin young butterflies, she said, almost surprised. They're still alive. Pero parang nagpulit sila ng pakpak. They just changed their wings. We held our own little fika, on a bench under a portrait of a man who'd never eaten queso puti in his life. 2 paper cups that burned our fingers nice, a dry cinnamon bun that turned wet with steam in the bag and somehow tasted perfect anyway. A baby in a too big snowsuit waddled past like an animated pillow and my wife barked a laugh that made 3 old ladies turn and smile at her like they just decided she was their niece. Outside, the sky did that Sweden in March trick where it can't commit to a weather. Sun, then snow, then a gust that chased itself down the street. We took photos by the water with her small blue folder under her arm, the word Medborger peeking like a secret. She made me pose with it too. Shared, she said, and kissed me in that brisk, efficient way people do it when their lips are at war with the cold. Home smelled like the inside of our rice cooker and effervescent oil because some things are now permanent. Cape came to the door like a dog, tripped over his own paws, and meowed with the insulted dignity of a tiny lion. We stuck a toothpick Swedish flag and a paper Philippine flag in a cup on the windowsill and watched them both tremble a little in the heat from the radiator. It felt like a small parade that forgot to be loud. I started chopping garlic like all good ceremonies end. Her sister texted again, 2 words that made my chest loosen the way a too tight shirt does when you unbutton it. Stable nah. The bill was marked paid. No more call cents. My wife inhaled like her rebs had just decided to expand to their actual size. She turned to me and said, "Salamat. Not for the money." For standing in the door with her while she learned how to close it. That night, the power did a flicker and then went out like someone had put the city in their pocket. We found each other by the blue light of our phones and then by hands. Candles turned our faces into stories. The rice cooker went silent, offended and useless. We put the pot on the gas, listened to the rice argue against boiling and then give in, soft and right. She put on a cardigan that smelled so much like her I thought if I died right then my ghost would live in our closet. "Practice?" she asked in the dark, thumb already finding the sticky note on the TV that had the new Tagalog song written in her handwriting. "Mahal kita, pero wag ka nang umasanatama ang ng mo," I told her. "I love you, but don't hope my ng will ever be right." We sang anyway, low and ugly in hours, and somewhere between verse and chorus I felt that old sadness slink in to see if there was still a place for it. We looked at each other. We didn't even need the words. Our hands did the work the words used to do. Fikimuna. Hingimuna. Kate chose that exact moment to sneeze into the candle and we both swatted at air and laughed until the apartment made the shape of a party with just us in it. Before bed, we stood in front of the whiteboard in the den. The top half was already a scrapbook of our ridiculousness. She wrote, careful as if the words would be graded, Bansa. Bahay. Anganan. Country. Home. Boundaries. Mundari, in Tagalog, she added, Hindi kailangan masaktan para magmahal. You don't have to be hurt to love. I wrote in my bad Swedish, K arlek med grnsr fork for and K arlek. Love with borders is still love. Then I drew a stake figure tulip with a graduation cap because obviously that's what the day needed. She drew a tiny Swedish flag holding hands with a Philippine flag and then added a cat between them with one paw up like a very important official. We laid down in my brain, traitor that it is, tried to spool out 300 future problems, in the dark. Her hand found mine and squeezed our 2-beat code. I squeezed back, and it felt like the first language we ever spoke to each other properly. Somewhere deep in the building, our radiator clicked a stubborn beat, the city hummed on its own lungs, and Cape snored like a small motor who finally believed the table it was bolted to wasn't going anywhere. Tomorrow there will be dishes and email and the ongoing war of who left the spoon in the sink to die. But tonight my wife is a citizen, we set a line and we didn't drown in it, and there is rice in a cooker too big for us on a counter that belongs to us both. Kahit maputi na, ang buak ko, ikaw pa rin. Tils ret Blair vit, Roman 6 TV. And if the old brain wakes in the night looking for old doors, we know where we hid the new keys.